yes, we're undertaking quite the task in today's video. We are going to list out the best pop albums of the 21st century so far. I'm kind of jumping on the trend, the bandwagon of many lists I've seen recently, which are listing out the best albums, the best songs, the best yada 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 of the 21st century so far. I think Rolling Stone have been one of the big trailblazers of it, and a few other publications have been doing it too, so I thought, why not make my own list? But we're doing it differently to how other people have been doing it over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down by genre, because I think piling on a huge list including all the genres would maybe just be a little bit too much. So I'm going to break it down, give you pop albums this week, and then maybe, depending on how much you enjoy this one, we'll give you rap, we'll give you rock, we'll give you yada yada yada. We'll keep going with the genres and have a succinct list for as many as I possibly can, and hopefully you guys are on board with it. A few things to say first, particularly with this video, is that pop, I think, particularly in the 21st century, is broader than it's really ever been. I know some people may be jumping down the throats of modern music and saying it's all not very good, it's not as good as it used to be, whatever. I don't really subscribe to that opinion, but I think what you can't really argue is that the way music can be considered pop now is so different, and I've kind of and ahed and scratched my head a little bit with a few of these picks. Are they properly pop by definition? But I think I'm just gonna not think about it over the top too much and just go with the flow. If there's a reason why I think this album can feel like it's a pop album, I'm going to include it, and I'm not going to really go crazy about specific genre definitions. So please keep that in mind. J. Cole, keep that in mind, okay? Keep in mind that my definition of pop is pretty broad. It's more of an umbrella term. It's not necessarily what's been popular, and it's very much albums that can feel like they're structured in a pop way. They could maybe be art pop, they could be indie pop, they could be synth pop, they could be dream pop, whatever you want it to be, as long as it feels in some kind of way pop, it's going to be here. And like I say, the 21st century has shown us more so than ever that genre tags are kind of being thrown out the window, because anybody can be absolutely anything. Even hip-hop nowadays can really be considered pop in some ways. I'm not going to have rap albums on this list, don't worry, but I think there is a conversation to be had about how hip-hop, particularly from the 2000s onwards, started to become more like pop music. So yeah, let's not go crazy about that. If you're going to shout at me in the comments and be like, this album's not really pop, I'm probably just going to go, okay, cool, let's carry on and let's cry about something else. It ain't that big of a deal. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there first before I get into the list. There'll be some albums that you might want to see here that don't make it, but for me, these are my 25 best pop albums of the 21st century so far, and hopefully you're on board. Hopefully you get maybe some new recommendations from this, and you get a unique list and get something out of this video. Should we just get on with it straight away into the top 25? Let's just not waste any more time now. Let's go. Overpowered, Roisin Murphy kicking off the list in terms of just in your face clattering synth pop bangers. You can't really go wrong with this. Tracks like Body Language, tracks like Crybaby, absolute massive bass grooves on these tracks. I know some people might think her 2020 album would deserve to be here over this one, but you are incorrect. This is easily her best album and has just the most bombastic energy to it. Number 24, we've got Night Falls over Quarter Dollar, which may feel a little bit more of a twee chamber pop, indie pop type album, but I thought it really did deserve to be included here because Jens Lekman just has such a charming voice. Some of these tracks have a real whimsy to them that I absolutely adore. This is definitely a highlight of the 21st century, and very sad to see it not really make many other lists when it comes to this kind of 21st century culmination of the best music, but for me it had to be here. At number 23 we got Clopelgag, which I will botch the name of the album, Leotwel Thari. I'm not French, I apologise, but this is a wonderful, glorious, stunning album. I think anybody that is a fan of like the classic French pop sounds of like Francois Hardy would absolutely adore Clopelgag, because this album here is just so lovely and warm. At 22, we've got Titanic Rising by Wiseblood. Hands down one of the best album covers of the entire 21st century so far, by the way, regardless of genre, but it is absolutely up there, one of the best album covers. And the album itself does feel like really cosmic in sound as well, just like this album, super watery. It flows wonderfully as well. Wiseblood has an absolute gorgeous voice. These tracks have huge kind of like Carpenter's inspired production and, you know, really sunny and sunshiny pop moments as well in the choruses, while also just being incredibly endearing and just stunning as well. Like tracks like Movies, absolutely amazing in how its scope is just widened into this blissful beauty. It's stunning. It's stunning. And 21, some people might want to see After Hours here, which is fine. But I gotta go Dawn FM. Dawn FM is my guy. Dawn FM is my guy, okay? Dawn FM is the one for me, and it's just the purest pop album I think Abel has ever given us. It's got that classic 80s synth pop sound, which he had been flirting with for years. There were tracks on After Hours which were huge in their sound, obviously Save Your Tears, Blinding Lights being some of his biggest ever hits, but I think this album is far more concise in its sound. I think it sticks to the vibe so much better. Every track feels like it's just got a super catchy earworm drilled into it, and it gets stuck in your head forever. Out of Time, absolute jam. Sacrifice, Take a Breath, just the whole album I think is great. It's got a really odd concept to it as well, with Jim Carrey kind of popping in and out here and there with those little radio announcements. But yeah, Dawn FM, spectacular album. Less Than Zero, still my favourite Weekend song to this day as well. I can't really argue with this being on the list. It's fantastic. Less Than Matters, one of the dreamiest albums of the 21st century. Love this album. I think the radio department are criminally underrated in all aspects of music. Love what they do. And at number 19, I've got Heart Failure by Come and Have a Go. Probably the only time you'll see an album like this on a list like this, really. I know I champion this album probably more than most, but I am standing by it. I think Come On Have a Go makes some really slick, fun, danceable pop music with some really, really high energy, fist pumping action, while also maintaining some kind of like cool and odd artsy moments as well, just like the closing track on this album. Yeah, I'm always going to be you know, the champion for this album, because I feel like it deserves it. And yeah, it might not be the most widely known album on this list, but I think it really deserves to be here. And then at number 18, I've got Raw Data Feel by Everything Everything. I think it's very close between Get to Heaven and this. I would probably still say Get to Heaven slightly edges it, but that one feels a bit more rooted in indie rock sounds, so be prepared to see that one on the rock list that I do when that one comes out eventually. But yeah, for me personally, I think Raw Data Feel just feels far more like pop, to be honest, just in the way the tracks kind of have these glitchy synth pop indie-tronica moments. I think the choruses pop a little bit more. It's very colourful, it's very bright, and has a really odd AI quirk to it as well, which I think can be a bit iffy with a lot of music, especially when you're trying to handle AI or you're trying to incorporate AI, but they do it in a really clever way. Some of the lyrics are absolutely batshit weird as hell, hilarious at times, but I think it really works for the concept of what they're doing, and it's just super fun to listen to as well. Like Pizza Boy, Cut Up, so good. We got Brat at 17, and a massive cultural moment for 2024, but I think it massively deserves to be on such a list like this as well, because Charlie XCX has been a forward-thinking pop artist for a long time. Again, you could throw in Pop 2 here, you could throw in How I'm Feeling Now here, and it wouldn't really feel out of place to have any of those albums on this list. But for me, I think Brat just kind of culminates everything that she was trying to achieve for years, and it just gave her the way to blend the more accessible pop sounds with her more kind of jagged and hyper pop approach as well, and came together in such a fantastic way that felt really true to what she was doing as an artist. It felt authentic. A lot of the lyrics are super personal as well. It was great to see that she could have such success by being just unapologetically Charlie, and it's a great album as well. I think it's still her best as well, and I will maintain that for a long time, I believe. So yeah, Brat absolutely deserves its placement on the 21st century so far, as does this next album, another massive album for its year, Renaissance by Beyonce. And some people might want to see Lemonade here, and I wouldn't really begrudge you of that either. If you want Lemonade, have it, take it, whatever, you know. If you want Beyonce self-titled instead, take that too, sure, why not? But for me personally, I think Renaissance is Beyonce channeling the best sound she ever has in her career, so effortlessly as well. She's just randomly decided to go for this like disco, dance, house album that incorporates so many classic sounds, feels really true to the roots of the genre as well, and she just does it like she's been doing it for the entire career of hers, and yet she hadn't. And it was like, what, 20 years into her career? But even longer, actually, if you count Destiny's Child on top of that as well. And yet she just sounded so at home doing it, so infectious, so groovy, so fun. Yeah, Renaissance for me had to be here. Honestly, you could argue it should be higher, actually, but I've got it here because I've got quite a few albums that I just like a little bit more. 15, we got Nurture, Porter Robinson. Love his transition into this huge, like, colossal sound that feels larger than life. It still has those indie-tronic isms from his earliest work as well, but just is like coated in this sugar, in this mistiness of beauty. It's so wonderful. All these tracks just feel so spellbinding, absolutely to die for listening to this. I think what he achieved on this album was absolutely remarkable. I also want to mention at number 14, Desire I Want to Turn Into You by Caroline Polachek. Every single of this album just felt like it could have took off, honestly. Like, she felt like she was absolutely at home, going for these weird little quirks of pop music and making it her own with her incredible voice that is really like no other. One of the best vocalists on this whole list easily. And yeah, just showed us that she could blend so many different styles of production on one album and make it work. Yeah, Caroline is one of a kind. Next, I want to mention at number 13, That Feels Good by Jessie Ware. Another artist that I think you might think, oh, you could have had this album instead, because her 2020 album, What's Your Pleasure, was the one that people really fell in love with. But this one I think was made for me. Like, this has the classic disco sounds, the classic funk sounds, the classic soul sounds from like the 70s and the 80s. You've got some like Rick James bass lines here. You've got some like Shaka Khan grooves there. The whole album is just absolutely dripping in that classic soulful funky sound, and she's so respectful to that genre as well. It's so many fun tracks on here. Shake the Bottle, you've got Pearls as well, which is like exuberant and extravagant. Begin Again as well, which is just this really like expensive sounding song. She was really fantastically like shifting her whole image on this album, where, because like What's Your Pleasure just gave her a new sound that made people absolutely fall in love with her, but then to shift it again with your next album and give it the more funky sounds and the soulful sounds was a bit of a risk, but I personally love this one even more. 10 love songs we got at 12 here from Suzanne Sumford. Again, another claim to being one of the best vocalists on this list for sure, but what she does with the synth pop sound and the maximalist approach that she takes, the seamless transitions between some of the tracks as well, are absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I love her approach to the synth pop sound on this album. Again, feels kind of underrated, honestly. I think if you're a big fan of this genre, I don't see why you wouldn't absolutely love tracks like Accelerate, tracks like Slowly, tracks like Kamikaze, tracks like Fade Away. Fade Away is absolutely god tier stuff. I absolutely love it. At number 11, we got Welcome to the Garden by Emily Steinwall. Again, a little bit like Come and Have a Go. Not really an album you're going to see on these kinds of lists, but that's what you get different with Not Real Music. You get something new and fresh. And while this album isn't necessarily pop by definition, there are times where there's some really explosive like rock production that burst through out of nowhere, particularly on the title track. But I just think her progressive approach and the artistic approach and some of the really like absolutely gorgeous chamber pop instrumentals, some of the baroque pop sounds on this album kind of make me squeeze it into this list. I think it just about earns its right being in this genre. And yeah, talk about incredible voices. What the hell is this, man? She sounds like a dove on some of these tracks. It is just the most heavenly thing you've ever bloody heard. It's so good. We're in the top 10 now. I just want to apologize for my throat because it's a little bit off today, but we're going to keep powering through for the purpose of this list. And at number 10, we have George Clanton with Slide. Yeah, kind of an album that blends so many different sounds together that you really could only get in the 21st century. Chillwave, vaporwave, dream pop, all kind of coming together, synth pop as well. There isn't a way in which this album could have existed in the 90s, even though there are tracks that do take inspiration from that sound. You know, you've got that kind of Mazzy Star influence coming through, that shoegaze influence a little bit. You've got even a bit of a baggy sound, which he developed even further on his next album for sure, but it still kind of lingers on this album too. But talk about albums that just make you feel like you're floating in air and everything just is forgotten and life is easy and you feel like you're just floating on a cloud. This is that album right here. Number 9, No Shape, Perfume Genius. One of the best writers of our time, I think. A remarkable lyricist that gets not enough respect he deserves, really, because this album has such a unique angle, talking about like a skin condition that he has and kind of feels like he doesn't live in his own body and he has no shape. That's kind of the whole purpose of this album, the whole purpose of the writing. But even still beyond that, these tracks are just incredible. I mean, that Kate Bush influence shines through so much throughout this album, on tracks like Wreath, on tracks like Slip Away, one of the best pop songs I think I've ever heard, honestly. Yeah, amazing stuff. Had to include this. And at number 8, Speak For Yourself by Imogen Heap, who is getting a little bit of love recently. She's randomly made her way into the top 40 in the UK. Like 20 years after the album came out, or some crazy thing. It's mad. It's absolutely mad. But I'm here for it, because Headlock is a great song, and I'm glad to see the kids on TikTok are really gravitating towards this, because what a song and what an album. Just the blueprint for so much of what came after. You probably wouldn't get a lot of cloud rap if it weren't for her, which is crazy to say. Crazy to say, but it's true. It's true. Clams Casinos and Godbeat came from Imogen Heap. You've got Caroline Polachek taking huge influence from Imogen Heap. You've got Ariana Grande covering Imogen Heap on one of her biggest albums, Sweetener. Like, yeah, the influence reaches far and wide, and Imogen Heap, 20 years later, is now really starting to see that respect come her way. But what an album this is. Maybe a little bit surprised to see this one so high, but I'm committing to it because I do truly think when all is said and done, this will be considered one of the best of the 21st century. Imaginal Disc by Magdalena Bay. I'm locking it in. It only came out like 6 months ago, but I'm locking it in. This right here is absolutely glorious. It's really how pop music can truly be. It has a futuristic sound, it has a modern sound, it pulls from other eras but twists it into its own modern way. I just think the way in which they come through with their concepts, their ideas, their vision, it's all expertly done. The hooks I think are super infectious as well. It's just magic. It just all is super magical to me, and I absolutely adore it. At number 6, we've got Fever by Kylie Minogue. Probably the most pure pop album on this list, really. It's got hits for days. Pretty much every track could be a single, even though they all weren't singles, but you could justify every song being a single. If you're from the UK, this is just like childhood nostalgia in one album, really. All of these songs like were huge at the time. Can't Get You Out of My Head, Love at First Sight, like just all super enjoyable dance pop tunes. Yeah, Kylie Minogue really at the height of her career here. The peak of her powers gave us one of the best pop albums ever, not just the 21st century. In the top 5 now, perhaps surprising for some people to see this one so high, but if you know me well, you probably won't be shocked to see this here at all. Hypochondriac, Breakance, perhaps stretching again the definition of what pop is here, but I feel like this is what pop could be. It has all of the makings to influence a generation of artists, and I think it kind of has in some ways as well. I'm starting to see a lot of artists pop up in the underground that sound a lot like Breakance, and yeah, for me this one is very much deserving of making its way here. It has a glitchy pop sound, it has a bit of a hyper pop sound as well, it has like kind of emo rapisms coming through as well, blended all together to create probably the most 2022 album you could ever imagine, really. It sounds so of its time, but I also feel like it sounds like it's the future of what could come as well. Adore this thing, so many crazy hooks, so many crazy instrumental breaks, and just wizardry on this album. Yeah. Number 4, we've got Teen Dream by Beach House, which is very much a classic at this stage. I wouldn't be surprised to see this on other lists and other Beach House albums on lists like this as well. But again, that dream pop sound isn't really perfected anywhere else other than what Beach House do. They have taken that genre and made it their own completely, and I think so many amazing songs live on this album. It's such a warm and delicate album. It's so inviting. It feels like a relative that you can always go to and get the best advice you can imagine from. It's, yeah, wonderful. We're in the top 3 now, and this is the mightiest of the mighty for me. I've got Illinois with Sufjan Stevens here. Yeah, just talk about like maximalist approach. Just like all these songs take on such bizarre concepts and runtimes that makes the album feel like it could be a little much, a little long, a little over the top, but it's just done so well. And you still have those slowed down, beautiful, sad moments that you get on all of his other albums, like Kashmir Pulaski Day. But you know what, man? I just think, even though I can't remember any of the track titles, playing this from front to back is just like something else, truly. Number 2, Have You In My Wilderness by Julia Holter. This is still to this day the greatest live performance I've ever seen, because she has a voice like no other, and she is magical and heavenly and stunning and angel-like with these tracks. They just sit with you and you can sink into them in ways that you can't on so many other albums. Feel You is really, really glorious as well. Yeah, again, kind of like more in the dreamy Baroque pop, maybe chamber pop sound, but God, these tracks touch you. These tracks touch you. And at number 1, for me, my pop album of the 21st century so far couldn't really be anything else. It's Soviet Kitsch by Regina Spektor, which again I know is breaking the mold for genre tags. Some of these tracks are piano rock, some of these tracks are baroque pop, chamber pop, whatever you want to call it, but I think these tracks are very much rooted and structured in the pop sense that makes it very much definitely in this kind of pop realm for me personally. But yeah, this is one of the most charming and full of life, full of personality albums I've ever heard. It's all genres really one of the best albums I've ever heard, regardless of decade, regardless of genre, whatever. It's just up there. I don't think there's a writer really like Regina. I think it's easily her best album too, by the way. I don't think there's any other album in the conversation for being at like the top of this list. She has other brilliant albums, Remember Us to Life, Songs, Far, for sure, but for me personally, this is far and away the best one. You have incredibly powerful moments like Chemo Limo. You have some really silly and funny and quirky moments like the track Poor Little Rich Boy. So many fun and like genuinely really funny lyrics that pop up here. She's just got so much personality. She knows how to put together a beautiful, stunning track like Us. Those little dolphin weird whales that she does. Just like, what are you doing? It's just got so much charm to it. It really is, for me, one of the best albums ever, and an album that I am just, in awe of, and to this day absolutely adore. So yeah, I have a lot of adoration for this album, and it just had to be my number one, really. Once I thought about it a little bit more, and once I realised that it kind of is very much structured in a way that a pop album would be, I just thought, screw it, let's put it at number one, because I didn't really think anything else really truly deserved it. So that's it from me. If you like this list, please subscribe, please share it around, please let me know in the comments what you think, what I missed out, if you were expecting, like, I don't know, like mainstream pop albums on this list, then you might be a little bit disappointed, but I still threw a lot of those in anyway. And yeah, I kind of just broadened out the term pop to give you a bit of a mixed and diverse list, which I think represents the 21st century so far in a way that I don't think I could have done any way else. So sorry that there's no Taylor Swift, sorry that there's no Fergie. Did you want to see Fergie? There's no Fergie here. Did you want to see Sia? I'm sorry, no Sia, no Katy Perry, no Ariana. Maybe there's room for those albums in other lists, but for me personally, this is my list. And I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you've got something out of this. Let me know your list in the comments as well. And if you want to see more, we can do other genres too. We can do hip-hop, we can do electronic, we can do rock. We can do the job lot if we really need to. So thank you for watching. Have a good day. Subscribe. Check out my Patreon, Feeling Generous as well. And goodbye.